am Matt Kuznicki. I am with AbleDocs. We at AbleDocs are in the process of implementing a PDF UA-centric mobile reader. And along the way, we have learned a number of different lessons. I would like to share some of the lessons that we have learned with you today. Before we get started, I want to define what I mean by a PDF UA-centric mobile reader. A PDF UA-centric mobile reader is a PDF reader that focuses primarily on making accessible PDF files, that is to say PDF UA files, as accessible in their presentation to as many users as possible through facilitating visual and other content transformations, as well as facilitating navigation experience transformations, rather than having a PDF viewer that tries to transform the experience for all PDF files. To the best of our knowledge, there are no PDF UA-centric mobile readers out there currently. A little bit about myself before I introduce our reader. I'm Matt Kuznicki. I am the Chief System Architect at AbleDocs. I am also the Chairman of the PDF Association's Board of Directors since 2016. I've been working with PDF in a technical developer and product development context for over 20 years, including over 10 years of standards development on the core PDF specification, on the PDF UA specification, and on other PDF standards. Several of my colleagues at AbleDocs, I'm proud to say, are also active contributors to the PDF and the PDF UA standards. We at AbleDocs are focused chiefly on digital accessibility. And in our focus on digital accessibility, we've learned that there is a need for an accessibility focused mobile PDF reader. Mobile PDF readers to date have really matched their desktop brethren in being focused primarily on visual presentation accuracy. There are several mobile PDF readers out there that do facilitate presentation transformation, reflow modes to better present PDFs on small screens. But these transformations and these viewers are really tailored to transforming PDFs in the general case. We are to date unaware of a mobile PDF reader that is focused first and foremost on accessibility and on using the accessibility information in PDF UA files explicitly to facilitate as flexible and accessible a document experience for accessible PDF files as possible. Transformations that focus on general case PDFs, making them easier to read, there is certainly value in those, no doubt. But we feel there's a need for a more specialized and flexible, accessible experience. Why do we feel that way? A significant number of mobile users have impairments to the typical small screen PDF experience, whether that is that text is too small to read, all the way to a reliance on screen readers and assistive technology solely as their means of content consumption. Accessibility enabled PDFs as a proportion of PDF files being generated are ever increasing. They're increasing not just because more jurisdictions are putting more regulations in place that are mandating digital document accessibility in PDFs and in other formats, but also because more and more organizations are realizing that accessible PDFs and accessible information is the right thing to do. And of course, we're thankful to those organizations who do realize that. This, at the same time, intersects with an increasing ability for content generators to generate PDF UA files more easily than ever before. This also coincides with increasing proportional consumption of information on mobile devices versus full-size desktop screens or other means, meaning or causing equitable access to mobile to information and to experiences in the mobile space becoming more vital, not just for those with disabilities, but really for all users. And accessible PDFs, accessibility focused mobile experiences don't just benefit those who rely on assistive technology, but benefit a much broader audience. So what is an accessibility focused mobile document experience other than a huge mouthful to get out? Well, a mobile experience focused on accessibility more than anything is one that uses the tagging, the semantics, the other information in accessible PDFs to allow as great a customization both in the presentation of information and in the experience of accessing that information as possible. So whether that is supporting platform read aloud capabilities and other assistive technologies, whether that is honoring platform settings for presentations that users have put in place, whether that is simply allowing users to tailor their consumption experience. And this experience to be tailored not just for people who are reading documents from beginning to end. I mean, let's be clear, most of us on mobile devices are not sitting and consuming information linearly from start to finish. Instead, we navigate, we go forward, we go back, we search, we reference content, we jump around in content. And an accessibility focused experience is one that gives maximum flexibility in how people can interact to perform that navigation, to perform that search, that viewing, and that reviewing of content. And it's an experience that takes advantage of PDF UA to enable these experiences on the device instead of relying on having a network connection or a third-party service to process files and send a transformed version back. So we've learned a number of lessons along the way, and before you ask, we're still in the process of creating this viewer. We anticipate that it will be available in the spring of 2022. to the general public. It will be released under the auspices of the PDF UA Foundation. And so we are still learning lessons, but I wanted to share ones that we've learned so far along the way. For these lessons, I am going to assume that you're like most application developers or most content developers or most professionals who you may have some ideas or knowledge of accessibility topics, but I'm assuming that you are not an accessibility expert. If you are an accessibility expert, that is awesome. I salute you, and some of this will be reviewed for you. But please stay tuned. Most important lesson I want to emphasize is not really an accessibility lesson at all, but it's a lesson that has profound implications for any product development. And that is that you are likely not your target audience. You are likely a smart person who has a lot of experience in reading documents in a variety of different settings. And so when we talk about a mobile PDF experience, you probably have enough experience to have a number of opinions on what qualifies as a good experience and what qualifies as a bad experience. You probably have enough professional experience working with various applications to have good opinions on what makes for good applications and what makes for bad application experiences. And from these, as we're smart people here, it's very easy to form opinions. It is very hard sometimes to remember that our opinions, if we're like most people developing content or applications, we do not have lived experience relying on assistive technology or accessibility features as our sole means of accessing information. And so it's very important not just to bring our own opinions and experiences into experience development, but to actively seek out users in your target market. In our case, users who rely on assistive technology to interact with information. Now, of course, accessibility features don't just benefit those who rely on assistive technology, but they assist many different audiences. And while I said you're likely not in your target audience, there's also no single target audience for most experiences. And in PDF accessibility and accessibility to information really covers a wide variety of different topics. One of the disservices that I see that we do as an industry when we talk about accessibility is that we tend to default to discussing those who are entirely unsighted. It's a very common example. It's a very useful example because affordances and capabilities that we put into our applications to facilitate those who are without sight are critical, and they are easy to use as a reducing filter. But when we think about sight-related concerns, there are a wide variety of sight-related concerns that people can have without being completely unsighted, whether that is issues with color blindness whether those are issues with macular degeneration, whether those are simply temporary viewing issues where you're not able to use a visually oriented PDF display because you are distracted in your focus because you are driving or otherwise um, focus reduced. All of these situations also benefit from accessibility features and are part of the audience for accessibility features. However, that said, those who do have visual and cognitive and physical and other disabilities, we recognize they are reliant on accessible experience more than those for whom they're just preferences. And these audiences are disproportionately disserviced by PDF experiences that disregard PDF accessibility features. We at AbleDocs aim to change that. So key lesson, I talk about flexibility in content presentation and navigation, and users want all those things. Users do not want a standards conforming PDF UA reader. This is maybe traumatic for some of you out there, and for somebody who spends significant time developing these standards, this is somewhat conflicting for me as well sometimes. A PDF UA is vital. It is extremely useful in bringing accessibility to PDF as a file format, as an input to an accessible experience. But users don't really want to think about inputs being standards conforming to an experience. Users want the accessible experience instead. They want access to information in their documents. They want flexibility in how they access documents. Users don't want to care about strict PDF UA reader conformance. They don't want a PDF UA reader that is restricted to just those capabilities and those behaviors that are dictated by the PDF UA standard. In other words, we've learned that it's more important to be useful than to be a strictly conforming reader. Though more important than both those things, it's most important to make content accessible. Now, as I touched on before, accessibility isn't just for the entirely unsighted. It's not just for people with vision loss. Even those with low vision, even those without low vision, with what we might consider to be normal vision, can have issues with navigation in terms of scrolling and whether they're able to follow continuous scrolling or whether they require discrete page by page scrolling. Some users can only really reliably read one type or the other. Some users can use both, but will have a preference based on their situation or their content that they're trying to access. And reading challenges are not just visual challenges, not just low vision, no vision. Again, as I touched on, but other disabilities, other challenges that bring to various user bases a desire not just to have an accessible experience in terms of the information in a document. PDF UA is very good at capturing the semantics of information and facilitating style-less presentations such as screen reading. But a significant portion of the audience for an accessible experience can consume PDF styling information as well as textual information. They want that styling information, but it's simply that they need to be able to override certain characteristics of styling to tailor their presentation to their needs. There are many reasons a user may have difficulty reading certain types of documents or documents in general. And what we've learned from that is that it's vital to think about the accessible PDF experience, not just in terms of what PDF UA offers, but combining the ability to transform presentations through the use of tagged PDF, the foundation of PDF UA and PDF accessibility, with the style information that's contained graphically in PDF presentations. And it's also vital to be able to merge that with preferences that users have for the presentation of their information, whether they need to use specific fonts for text or specific fonts for headings, whether they have specific contrast requirements or other style transformations where users need to override what the author of a PDF UA file has put in place. So reading challenges extend to more than just document content. Yes, document presentation needs to be accessible. This is foundational. But the surrounding application and the surrounding environment also needs to be accessible in how it presents navigation, configuration, and other options to all users. Navigation and option selection need to have flexibility in how they are invoked. Many of us are used to being able to use pinch gestures to magnify screen content, for example. However, if you do not have mobility in your fingers to execute a pinch gesture, then you need an alternate means to be able to magnify your screen content. State changes are also key to consider in the experience of documents. State changes need to be predictable, they need to be understandable, and they need to be accessible to assistive technology without taking the focus from the reading experience and being unable to give that focus back. One key lesson that we've learned within all that is that it's not enough to support transformations and flexibility for just people with one type of disability. Really, there's a spectrum of different audiences that we have needed to consider with our environment, going from those who are completely reliant on assistive technology to those who are greatly helped by assistive technology and accessibility features, all the way to those who simply have preferences in how they access content, for whom accessibility features can enable these in an accessibility focused mobile experience. Another key lesson, and I touched on this earlier, is that we need to support multiple interaction modalities in an accessibility focused experience. Flexibility in tailoring content, tailoring interactions, being able to tailor both and the surrounding environment in ways that interact predictably and usefully when many different customizations and preferences are enforced is key. Users may have multiple different disabilities, multiple different preferences. Many users will have combinations of the two. To distill this down, flexibility is vital. Yes, this may go against what some of us think of PDF's core proposition is in terms of reliable visual presentation. And yes, you need to be able to give your users access to your documents as your authors have created them. But we feel it is just as important to be able to give users an experience that makes content and information accessible to them, no matter their obstacles, no matter their environment. So, a couple more mundane development challenges we've run into. Cross-platform development. I was told 10 years ago it worked great. It didn't then. It works a lot better now, but when it doesn't, tracking down why it doesn't is more difficult than ever before. User interface components, there are many out there that claim to be accessible. When evaluating, we found most of those claims don't really hold up to scrutiny and to usage. And in more and more accessible PDF documents being generated every year, most accessible document generators do a very good job. Most are conforming, but some are not. And our reader has needed to account for those that are good and some that are less good. But most importantly, as we continue at AbleDocs to grow and bring new people into this development, we find that we have to continually reinforce principles of inclusive development. We find that we need to always fight the impulse to look at something and say, if we like it, everybody else will. No, we need to remember that we are usually not our target market, and that we need to get feedback from our users. And that is what determines if something is useful or not. Accessibility thinking is a skill that needs development, it needs reinforcement, but it's a skill that really can't take hold unless those on your team have empathy for their users. From empathy flows a focus on the user experience, and from a focus on user experience, accessibility thinking and inclusive development can take hold. So as a lesson, plan for challenges, plan for learning along your journey to inclusive development and accessible development. Talk to your users instead of assuming. Build in time, build in allowances for accessibility testing, for experience refinement, for continual learning. To start with your continual learning, I will give you an easy way to start thinking in an accessibility mindset. I will give you 3 easy tests that you can bring back to your organization to start thinking about accessibility in your applications and your documents. The first is, can you use your document or your application if it's in monochrome? Users who are colorblind, can they use your experience? Second, if they are using screen magnifiers, can they use your application or your document without having to perform too much cumbersome navigation? And finally, can your application or your document be used if it's being read aloud through a screen reader, or if you want to picture somebody reading it to you sitting next to you? 3 easy tests that you can use, you can bring back to your organizations to integrate accessibility thinking uh, into your design. You may find that you need help with document accessibility along your journey, and that's okay. AbleDocs is here to help. A little bit about AbleDocs. We were founded in 2019, and since then we have grown to become the world leader in digital accessibility with offices all over the world. We have a variety of different products and services to help you understand what of your content is accessible, what is not, and to help you get the content you have that needs to be transformed for accessibility, transformed into accessible versions. We are the only company that doesn't just give our word that what we give you is accessible, but we back it up with a $10 million liability guarantee. I'm proud to be at AbleDocs. We at AbleDocs are proud that we're helping to make information more accessible to everybody. And with that, if you'd like more information, please visit our website, www.abledocs.com. And I'd like to say thank you for your time and your attention. And hopefully I've inspired you to bring some accessibility thinking back to your teams and your organizations. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Matt. You can download Matt's slides from today's presentation from the Handouts panel. We're now going to begin answering the questions submitted during today's presentation, and you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. Okay, let's just jump right in. How does this reader display files that have no PDF UA info?
So as a PDF UA focused mobile experience, its focus is on displaying PDF UA files. It does offer a fixed layout, image-based PDF view, akin to what you get in many other PDF viewers. But to be clear, there are many different PDF readers out there already doing this. We believe that a focus on presenting accessible PDFs as well as possible in a freely available PDF reader is a need that is not yet filled, and that is the need that we're aiming to fill.
Okay, next question. Does the PDF UA standard have any rules specifically for advanced mathematics and other kinds of STEM-related documents?
Certainly there are rules. I know that this is an active topic of consideration in the PDF UA standards communities, and one that's actively being worked on for PDF UA 2. There are standards in PDF UA 1 as well, but I think the general consensus is that these are not as well developed as they could be from a standards point of view in PDF UA 1.
So next question here is, so I don't know if this is the right place to ask, but do you have any ideas on how to test reflow in PDFs, WCAG success criteria 1.4.10, knowing that Acrobat's reflow option doesn't seem to be a good testing tool for this?
So direct reflow testing is from a viewer perspective, going to be implementation dependent. The best tool that I've found to test the capability of a PDF UA file to reflow in a suitable viewer is to use the PAC 2021 PDF UA accessibility checker. PAC 2021 being freely available from the PDF UA Foundation. And you can use its structure view to see the tagging in a PDF UA file. For testing reflow and how a given viewer is going to reflow, unfortunately, at this point, the state of the art seems to be to test it in the environments that you are most concerned about directly.
Okay. So how are you getting around the fact that most mobile accessibility APIs aren't designed to convey tagged PDF, let alone mapping the structure to comparable semantics?
So that's a great question. And the crux of it is in thinking of how you present that information in view to the system. And the person with this question is correct. Yeah, most of those APIs aren't really designed for that. A lot of the APIs are designed around an HTML centric point of view. And so what we found is that transforming PDF UA files into useful HTML, and by useful HTML, I mean HTML that contains ARIA attributes, that loads as much information into the HTML as possible, and shifts is only what's needed into the corresponding CSS. That allows us to take as much advantage of the platform APIs and capabilities for assistive technology, for read aloud, and for applying user preferences as possible.
Okay. How do you support reflow's reading order for low vision users beyond the tags tree reading order for screen reader users?
So that's a great question, and we are actively evaluating different techniques and different ways that we can support that, but we haven't come to a conclusion with our users at this time past supporting reflow of content order as it is laid out in the PDF UA structure tree. Very
Okay,
good question.
so then, if I understand you, Matt, your solution is that you align the two experiences on the structure tree.
Yes, but and maybe I misinterpreted the question. The way I was interpreting it was, what ways besides driving it from the structure tree
Okay.
does this reader support?
Yes, correct. Okay. So what are the top distinctions between a standard PDF file and a PDF UA file, and how do you go about creating a PDF UA file?
Wow, that's a question that I'm not sure I can answer in the time that we have. There are many different software packages that will create PDF UA files, including Microsoft Office is probably the most popular of them. InDesign, other packages. There are various vendor add-ons to various products that make for better quality accessible PDF files. But there are a number of different vendor tools, different tools out there to generate these. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of the
It
question?
was the top distinction between a standard PDF and a PDF UA file.
Well, 30-second version of what's different is that PDF UA files contain semantic tagging information. So they're not just the visual content, but they also contain tagging to say what the content actually means. So descriptions for images, tagging for rows and headers and cells and columns for tables, tagging to denote lists as lists. A lot of information that we, if we are sighted humans, may just intuit from the visual layout of a document. And that is kind of laid out in a markup format in languages like HTML and XML. Tags PDF brings that tagging into PDF, and PDF UA is a set of standardizations of that PDF tagging to ensure that proper semantics and complete semantics are present in a PDF and are therefore available to readers that take advantage of these.
Okay. All right. Last question we've got time for here is how does your reader concept compare with EPUB-based solutions?
So there are certainly similarities and there are certainly differences. This is a very, very big question, but to really distill it down, PDF UA and our accessibility focused PDF reader really aims to bring maximum accessibility for a maximum number of users to a reading experience while maintaining the ability to present content as an author intended content to be experienced. Or something like EPUB, on the other hand, is less able to really bring author intent strictly to documents, and is more focused on the flow of information, maybe a little less focused on being able to really capture interrelations and a fixed or a specific presentation of information. So I would say that an accessibility focused PDF experience really lives somewhere between those two user spaces.